I opened the door that morning just like any other day, barefoot, coffee in hand, still trying to shake off sleep. But this time, she was there, standing perfectly still on the wooden deck. Her ears flicked once, eyes locked on mine. She had something in her mouth. My brain took a moment to process it. A cub. A lynx cub, dangling gently from her jaws like a kitten being moved to a safer place. And behind her, two more. Tiny, wobbly. I swear I forgot how to breathe. It was her. The same lynx from yesterday. I had found her down by the creek in the early evening, barely able to stand. She didn't growl, didn't run, just looked at me like she had already given up. I ran back to the cabin, grabbed the leftover chicken from my fridge, and brought it to her. Sat down a few feet away and tossed a piece. She ate. Slowly, carefully. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes. No sudden movements. No words. Just quiet understanding. Then, as the sun slipped behind the pines, she disappeared into the trees. I honestly thought I'd imagined it. But she was real. And now she was back, with her entire family. I stood frozen in the doorway, the cold morning air creeping past my bare ankles. The cub in her mouth twitched its paw. The other two stayed close to her feet, unsure but curious. "You remember me?" I whispered. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just slowly stepped forward and placed the cub on the doormat. The tiny thing mewled, then sneezed. Her head turned slightly, eyes still on me. I stepped back, holding the door open. She nudged the cub with her nose, then looked at me again, as if asking permission. I stepped aside completely. "Come in, if you want." I couldn't believe what I was saying, letting a wild lynx into my house. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt like something else. Like this moment wasn't mine to question. She padded into the front sunroom first, silent and steady. The cubs followed, stumbling over their oversized paws. One of them tried to climb the edge of my old rug and rolled over. I smiled, unsure if I was dreaming. They settled near the windows, sniffing everything. She stood between them and the exit, watchful but calm. I sat down on the floor, leaving a wide space between us. Just watching. One of the cubs was noticeably smaller. He moved slower, and after just a few minutes, he started coughing. Not just a little sneeze, a deep, wet cough. The kind that clutches your chest and doesn't let go. The lynx turned toward him immediately, nudged him gently. He kept coughing, then lay down, curling into a tight ball. Something wasn't right. I got up slowly, went to the kitchen, and filled a shallow bowl with water. Then I opened a can of wet cat food, the emergency kind I keep for strays, and scooped it onto a paper plate. When I came back, the mother lynx stood up. I could feel her eyes on my hands. I placed the bowl and plate about 6 feet away from the little one and stepped back. She approached first, sniffed everything, tasted the water, then, as if giving approval, turned and chirped softly at the cubs. The stronger two came immediately. The sick one tried to stand but collapsed again. I watched him. His breathing was labored, each inhale louder than the last. I felt my chest tighten with every second. They stayed there most of the morning. I didn't move much, afraid of breaking whatever fragile trust existed between us. I called in sick to work, not that anyone would notice. I hadn't been back in months. By noon, the mother had curled up by the fireplace. The stronger cubs nestled into her side, but the sick one stayed close to the glass door, barely moving. I knelt near him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his little body. He looked up at me once, blinked slow, and coughed again. "You're burning up," I whispered. "What the hell do I do with you?" I reached out and touched his back lightly. He didn't pull away. I sat there for what felt like forever, his tiny ribcage rising and falling, too fast. Then I looked up and saw her, the mother lynx, watching me with something I couldn't explain. It wasn't fear. It wasn't threat. It was something deeper. Trust? I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking on him every hour. Around 3 in the morning, his breathing changed. Slower. Deeper. I placed a folded towel over him, gently tucking the edges so he stayed warm. As I sat there in the half-dark, listening to the fire crackle and his breath settle, I realized something. She didn't bring them to me by accident. I kept checking the little cub every 20 minutes. His breathing had gotten slower, but that didn't mean much. I've seen animals rally for a few hours only to fade again. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not under my roof. By mid-morning, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't just sit and watch him slip away. I found an old card in the drawer, blew the dust off it, and dialed. A few rings, then a tired voice answered. Hello? Hey, is this Dr. Morgan? It's Ben. From Spruce Ridge? A pause. Ben? Been a while. Everything all right? I swallowed. Not exactly. I've got a lynx cub. He's in rough shape. I think he's burning up. The mother brought him here. Another pause. Then, she brought him to you? Yeah, to my doorstep. I fed her yesterday. I don't know why, but she came back with 3 cubs. One of them's really sick. There was silence on the other end. Is he eating? Drinking? Not really. He's barely moving. I gave them water and some soft food. The other 2 ate a little. He didn't. All right, listen. Warmth is your priority. Get him wrapped in something soft. Old fleece, towel, anything. Try sugar water, half a teaspoon in a small bowl. If he won't drink, wet a cloth and let him lick it. Keep the mother calm. If she feels safe, she won't panic. Okay, got it. Ben? Yeah? Be careful. You're dealing with wild instincts. I hung up and exhaled hard. The mother was still curled by the fireplace, eyes half closed. The 2 healthier cubs slept against her belly. The sick one was a foot away, curled in on himself like a comma. I went to the laundry basket and pulled out an old fleece hoodie, cut the sleeves off, folded it into a soft cradle. Then I eased the cub onto it. He didn't fight, didn't move. I wrapped him gently, then slid the bundle closer to the fire. I sat beside him and whispered, "You better fight, little guy. I'm doing what I can." In the kitchen, I stirred some sugar into warm water and dipped a corner of a cloth napkin into it. When I brought it over, I touched the moist fabric to his mouth. At first, nothing. Then his tongue flicked. That's it. Come on. I stayed that way for an hour, re-wetting the cloth, letting him taste, just enough to keep him going. I kept the front door cracked open. She needed to feel free to come and go. That trust. We'd built it in less than a day, and I wasn't going to break it by closing her in. As the wind picked up, I threw another log into the stove. The fire popped and flared. She didn't move, just watched. Later, I brought a space heater from the shed and aimed it low near the cub. Sat with him on the rug, my back against the wall. And slowly, something in me started to unravel. I don't talk about my son. Most people around here don't even know I had one. He was 6. His name was Caleb. Got sick fast. One week, we were flying paper airplanes. The next, I was holding his hand in a hospital room, painted like a jungle. My wife, Rachel, left a few months later. Couldn't take the silence. Said it felt like the house was swallowing her whole. Maybe it was. I stayed. Couldn't leave. Didn't want to forget the sound of his laugh in the hallway. His little rain boots still sit by the back door. It's been 3 years. I don't know why I'm telling you this, I said to the cub. You're not even listening. But maybe he was. Because he moved his head, just slightly, enough to make my breath hitch. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the bedroom. I stayed on the rug, the cub beside me, wrapped in the hoodie. I kept one hand resting gently on his side. His breathing was still shallow, but steady. At some point I drifted off. Maybe an hour, maybe more. And when I opened my eyes again, she was there, curled just inches from me, her golden eyes watching in the dim light. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just let the moment hold. She stretched her front leg across her cub, touching him gently with her paw. Then she looked at me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The banging came just after noon. Not a knock, a full-on fist to wood kind of bang. I shot up from the rug, heart racing. The mother lynx jolted, ears perked. The cubs scrambled behind the couch. Who is it? I called. It's Roger. Open up. Roger. My closest neighbor, if you could call someone living 2 miles away a neighbor. He was the type who complained about everything and everyone, mostly into his CB radio or at the town bar. I cracked the door. He stood there with his arms crossed and a smirk on his sunburned face. You keeping pets now, Ben? He said, tilting his head toward the open window. I saw one of them from the trail. Big cat. Real big. It's not what you think, I said. Don't matter what I think. I already called it in. Told Fish and Game everything I saw. Wait, you did what? He shrugged. You think you can just start a roadside zoo out here and no one's gonna notice? Then he turned and walked away like he'd just tossed a grenade. By the time the white truck rolled up the gravel drive an hour later, my hands were shaking. The decal on the door read, State Wildlife Authority. 2 men got out. One in uniform, the other in a hunter's cap with a clipboard. Ben Whitmore? The uniform asked. Yeah, we got a call about a possible illegal detainment of protected wildlife. Specifically, Eurasian lynx. You mind if we take a look around? They didn't wait for my answer. The man in uniform walked past me, scanning the porch. I stepped back, panicked. The mother lynx was gone, but the cubs were still inside, huddled in the corner. Look, they're not detained. She came here on her own. Brought her cubs. One of them's sick. I'm just trying to help. That's so? The man in the cap said. Because harboring wildlife, even with good intentions, is still a violation. I followed them inside. The smaller man pulled out his phone and started filming. You can't be serious, I said. This is documentation, in case charges are filed. I felt the ground shifting under me. The cubs cried out softly. One of them tried to hide under the coffee table. Where's the mother? The officer asked. She left. About an hour ago. Uh-huh. And how did she get in? I left the door open. The man raised an eyebrow. You left your door open, and a lynx just walked in? That's exactly what happened. The guy with the clipboard knelt, looked at the cubs. They look unwell, malnourished. This is a liability. They're wild animals. They came here because they had nowhere else to go. You got any proof of that? I opened my laptop, showed them the outdoor camera footage, her first arrival, the way she dropped the cub on the porch, how hesitant she looked. The officer watched quietly. Still, he said, this doesn't change the law. So what are you saying? You gonna take them? That's not up to me. But we'll be filing a report. Someone will follow up. They left without another word. The white truck disappeared into the trees. I stood on the porch long after they were gone, my breath caught in my chest. Inside, the cubs mewled. One of them, the smallest, was back under the fleece. I poured warm water and set it beside them. But the mother didn't return that evening, or that night. The next day passed slow, too quiet. I tried to distract myself, stacking firewood, fixing the leaky faucet, but I kept checking the tree line. Nothing. I checked the camera footage. No sign of her. Did they scare her off for good? The cubs started crying more, wandering toward the door. I left meat on the porch, untouched. By the second night, I couldn't sleep. I kept stepping outside with a flashlight, hoping to see her eyes glinting in the dark. Around 3 a.m, the outdoor motion alert chimed. My stomach jumped. I pulled up the camera feed, but it wasn't the lynx. Someone was creeping along the side of the house. A man, put up, hands in pockets, moving slow. He stopped under the kitchen window and looked inside. Then he turned off the path light. I didn't move. I just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the grainy camera feed on my laptop. The man outside hadn't noticed the infrared. He paced slowly, deliberately, like he knew the layout. I hit record. My heart thudded. He stopped by the back of the house, where the crawlspace vent was. Crouched low, stayed there for a good 3 minutes. Then he slipped something, looked like a folded cloth, into the vent. Got up, looked around, walked off into the woods like he'd never been there. At sunrise, I was already out the door, rifle slung over my back, not loaded, just to feel safer. I walked to the crawlspace vent, pulled the cloth out. Inside was a folded map, old, water-stained, parts of it unreadable, but I recognized the terrain. My ridge. There were X's drawn in red marker. One of them was right under my cabin. What the hell is this? I called the sheriff's office. No answer. Called again. Nothing. So I drove into town. It's a small place. One diner, one gas station, a half-dead general store. I found the deputy smoking behind the diner, leaning against the wall like he owned the place. Ben, he said, squinting, thought you dropped off the face of the earth. I told him everything. About the lynx, the inspection, the man outside my house. He listened, nodded, then frowned. You say he left something under your house? Yeah, a map. Here. I unfolded it. He stared at it for a long time. This doesn't look new, he muttered. You sure it's not yours? I shook my head. Ever hear of Hank Keller? Can't say I have. He's the father of that officer who came to see you. Rick Keller. Hank used to run wildlife patrol up here back in the 90s. Got fired after some shady business. Word was he was into smuggling. Brought things across the Canadian border, used the forest routes. Gold. Antiques. And, apparently, amber. Amber? Yeah, real high-grade stuff. Mined illegally, brought through here. Some said he buried a stash when the feds got close. Then he vanished. And now his son's showing up at my cabin? Looks like it. Why? Maybe he thinks you found it. I left the station more uneasy than when I came. Back home, I walked the perimeter. Found boot tracks in the muddy edge near the shed. They weren't mine. The tread was deeper, newer. I grabbed a shovel and circled around the base of the cabin. I didn't know what I expected to find. But there was this gnawing sense that someone thought I was sitting on something big. By late afternoon, I was exhausted. The cubs mewled by the fireplace. I poured out the last of the wet food and lit a few lanterns. Still no sign of the mother. I checked the cameras again. Rewound. Paused. There. A shadow at the edge of the woods. A figure. Watching. I stormed outside with a flashlight, hard in my throat. Walked all the way to the tree line. Nothing but silence and wind. I stayed up late again. Slept in the chair with a hammer in my hand. It was just after midnight when I heard it. A soft thump against the side window. I jumped up, ran to the door, flung it open. She was back. The mother lynx. Limping. Blood on her side. She stumbled forward and collapsed just past the porch. Jesus, no? I rushed to her. She was breathing, barely. I grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her. You came back. She blinked, eyes cloudy but aware. Behind me, the cubs cried out. I turned with the flashlight and waved it along the tree line. Something moved. I took a step forward, and the world went dark. I woke up face down in the cold dirt, a dull ache pulsing at the back of my head. The flashlight lay a few feet away, still on, the beam pointing toward the trees. My hand was wet. Blood. I sat up slowly, vision swimming, heart pounding. The house, was it still there? The cubs? The mother lynx? I stumbled toward the porch, every step sending pain through my skull. The front door was wide open. Inside, the fire had burned low. The cubs were curled on the rug, asleep. Safe. But she wasn't there. I checked the perimeter. No tracks. No blood. It was like she had vanished again. That morning, I didn't call anyone. What would I even say? That someone knocked me out in my own yard while I was trying to help a lynx? So I waited. 2 days passed. The cubs stayed close. I fed them scrambled eggs, bits of chicken, whatever I could manage. They followed me around the house like shadows. Every creak of the wood, every snap of a twig outside made me spin around. Then, on the third morning, I heard it. A rustle. Not just movement, deliberate, heavy. I looked out the window. She was there, limping, thin but upright. Her side still raw, the wound crusted with dirt. She didn't come all the way, just stood at the edge of the yard and stared. I opened the door, stepped out slowly. You're alive. She turned, walked into the woods, stopped, looked back. I followed. She led me deep, farther than I'd ever gone behind the property. Through thick brush, down a gully, across a fallen log bridge. My legs burned. My breath hitched. But I didn't stop. Eventually, we reached a clearing. At its center stood an old hunting shack. The roof had half collapsed. The door hung by one hinge. Ivy strangled the outer walls. She waited by the doorway. I pushed it open. Inside, dust and mold. Broken chairs. Rusted tools. And under the floorboards, something wrapped in plastic. I pried the boards up. Inside was a tin box. Inside the box, photographs. A patch. A folded letter. And a dog tag. My brother's name. I dropped to my knees. He disappeared when I was 17. Took his bike one morning, never came back. They said he probably ran away. But we knew better. There were stories about that old ranger, Keller. About illegal hunts. Accidents that were never reported. And now here was the proof. The letter was addressed to Keller's supervisor. An unsigned confession. Details of a misfire during an off-the-record trap check. How they covered it up. Buried the body. My brother. The lynx stood by the door the whole time. Watching. You brought me here for this. She blinked. Then turned and disappeared into the trees. I took the box and walked home like a ghost. It took weeks to process what I'd found. I sent the letter anonymously. The local paper ran a story about it later, mentioned new evidence in a decades-old disappearance. No arrests. No closure. But at least the lie had a crack in it now. The cubs grew fast. Their legs stretched out. Their spots faded. They roughhoused in the yard, tore up my old boots, slept in the sun like they owned the place. And one morning, one of them, the boldest, snatched my glove from the porch bench and took off into the woods. I chased him halfway to the creek, laughing for the first time in what felt like years. He turned once to look at me, the glove hanging from his mouth like a trophy, then vanished between the trees. They stopped coming by a few days later. No goodbye, no final glance. But I knew they were all right. The mother never returned. Not physically, but sometimes, at dusk, I hear something in the distance. A low trill, a soft rustle. I stand on the porch, just listening. The house is still old, still drafty, still full of ghosts. But I don't close the door anymore. And I still don't know who saved who.